They thought they were dealing with an easy target. The HOA showed up with their clipboards and smug faces, claiming I owed thousands in fees I'd never even agreed to. And when I refused to pay, they took it further than anyone could imagine. They demolished my cabin by the lake. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just some ordinary man trying to get away from the city. I was a federal agent with the resources to uncover every shady move they had ever made and make them answer for it. My name is David. I had spent most of my adult life working cases that demanded long nights, endless paperwork, and constant pressure. I rarely took time for myself. The stress of the job was one thing, but the loneliness was another. When a fellow agent mentioned a small, peaceful lake a couple of hours outside the city where old cabins were sometimes available for cheap, I decided it was time to invest in something for me. A retreat, a place to breathe. The cabin I bought wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a wide porch, and a dock that stretched out over calm water. I paid for it outright. No mortgage, no debt. It was mine, free and clear. At least that's what I thought. A few weeks after moving in, I noticed letters piling up in my mailbox. Thick envelopes with the seal of the Lakeview Property Owners Association. I ignored the first few. I hadn't signed up for any HOA. I bought directly from the previous owner, an older man who had assured me there were no ongoing obligations. Still, the letters kept coming, louder in tone, more aggressive. One afternoon, as I was working on repairs on the porch, a woman in a crisp blouse and oversized sunglasses walked up my gravel path like she owned it. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't ask permission. She just stood there with a clipboard and a scowl. "You must be the new owner," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm Linda, the president of the Lakeview HOA. We've been trying to reach you." I set down my hammer and wiped my hands. "I've seen your letters," I said calmly, "but I think there's a mistake. I don't belong to your association. My deed doesn't mention anything about HOA fees." She smirked like she'd heard the excuse 100 times before. "Everyone here pays, whether they like it or not. That's how communities work. You're already behind by 3 months. That's $900. If you don't get current, the fines will pile up, and trust me, you don't want that." I stared at her for a moment, biting back my first instinct to flash my badge and shut her down right then and there. But I wasn't on duty. This was supposed to be my escape from that life. So instead, I kept my cool. "Linda," I said evenly, "I'm not paying a fee for an agreement I never signed. You'll need to take it up with the county records office, because my deed shows no mention of your HOA." Her smile vanished. Her jaw tightened. "We'll see about that," she hissed, before turning on her heel and marching back to her car. I figured that was the end of it. Maybe some harassment, maybe more letters, but nothing I couldn't handle. I had no idea just how far they were willing to go. The harassment escalated quickly. They posted notices on my front door, big red stickers claiming my property was delinquent and subject to lien. Neighbors I barely knew started giving me strange looks, as if I were some sort of troublemaker. And then one morning, I woke to the sound of heavy machinery. Through the window, I saw a crew of workers, hard hats on, carrying tools and equipment toward my cabin. And standing in front of them, arms crossed and smiling like she'd won the lottery, was Linda. I stormed outside. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded. Linda didn't flinch. "You've left us no choice. You've ignored warnings, refused to pay, and now we're exercising our right to enforce compliance. This structure is being demolished." I laughed in disbelief. "Demolished? This is my property. You have no legal authority to touch a single nail here." But my words fell on deaf ears. The workers started moving toward the porch with crowbars. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I wanted to shut it down immediately, but here's the thing. Sometimes in my line of work, you learn that patience is the most dangerous weapon you can wield. Let them think they've won. Let them overplay their hand. That's when you strike. I pulled out my phone, recording every second. I filmed Linda barking orders. I filmed the men ripping down my porch railing. I filmed as my sanctuary was reduced, piece by piece, to rubble. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, to stand there and watch them destroy what I had built for peace. But I kept repeating to myself, this isn't the end. This is the beginning. And Linda had no clue who she had just declared war against. The sound of wood splintering filled the air as the workers tore through the porch beams. My fists clenched, every nerve in my body telling me to intervene. But I forced myself to stay still. I wasn't going to stop them with my anger. I was going to stop them with the law. And when the law came from me, it was something they weren't prepared for. Linda was reveling in the destruction, walking around with her clipboard like some kind of general commanding troops. She kept glancing at me, waiting for me to snap, waiting for me to cave and offer to write her a check just to make it stop. But I didn't. I just recorded. Finally, she strutted over. "You're making this harder than it has to be," she said smugly. "We gave you every chance to cooperate, but you forced our hand. Maybe next time you'll learn that the HOA is bigger than one stubborn man." I looked her dead in the eye. "Linda, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life." She smirked. "Oh, is that a threat?" "No," I said calmly, holding my phone steady as I captured another piece of siding crashing to the ground. "That's a promise." Her expression faltered for just a moment, but then she turned away, waving for her crew to keep working. By the end of the day, my cabin looked like a storm had chewed it up and spit it out. Walls gone, roof caved, porch ripped to pieces. All that remained was a pile of debris where my home had stood that morning. Neighbors had come out to watch, whispering and pointing. I heard fragments of their conversations. "Didn't pay his fees. HOA warned him." Shame. Nice cabin, too. I wanted to shout the truth to all of them, that I didn't owe a dime. That Linda and her board were nothing more than bullies abusing power they didn't even legally have. But I knew words wouldn't matter right then. Evidence would. Proof would. When the workers packed up and left, Linda lingered just long enough to twist the knife. "You've been evicted," she said smugly. "If you try to rebuild without HOA approval, we'll just do this again. So either you pay up or you move on." I gave her a long, cold look. I'm not moving anywhere. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my truck staring at the ruins of my cabin under the moonlight, my mind racing. I wasn't just angry. I was focused. Linda thought she was dealing with some powerless homeowner who couldn't fight back. What she didn't realize was that investigating corruption was my profession. The next morning, I drove into town. My first stop was the county clerk's office. I requested every document tied to my property, every deed, every covenant. The clerk, a kind older man with glasses slipping down his nose, shuffled through files and handed me a folder. "No HOA liens, no covenants attached," he confirmed. "Your property isn't part of Lakeview HOA at all." That was all I needed to hear. I spent the rest of the day making calls. Contacts in property law. Former colleagues who specialized in white-collar investigations. Even a buddy who worked cybercrime and could dig into the HOA's financials from a different angle. By evening, the picture was starting to form. The Lakeview HOA had been pulling the same scam for years, targeting new owners, claiming mandatory fees that didn't exist, then bullying or scaring them into paying. Most people didn't fight back. They didn't have the time, the money, or the know-how. But Linda and her board had made the mistake of targeting me. I returned to the lake the following day. My destroyed cabin was still a painful sight, but now it fueled me. I noticed something new taped to a wooden stake in the ground. An official notice from the HOA, claiming my property was seized due to non-compliance. I tore it down and stuffed it in my pocket. Evidence. As I stood there, a neighbor walked over cautiously. His name was George, a quiet man who owned a cabin 2 lots down. He looked uneasy, glancing over his shoulder as he spoke. "Listen, I saw what happened yesterday," he said, "and I wanted to tell you, you're not the first. They did something similar to a family that moved in last year. They tore down their shed, claimed it was built without permission. The family paid thousands to settle it. They left not long after. Why didn't anyone stop them?" I asked. George sighed. "Most of us just keep our heads down. Linda, she's ruthless, always threatening fines, liens, lawsuits. People are scared. I nodded slowly. Not anymore. Over the next week, I built my case. I documented everything. The letters, the stickers, the video of the demolition, the false notice of seizure. I compiled witness statements from neighbors who'd been pressured or scammed. And behind the scenes, my cybercrime friend uncovered exactly what I suspected. The HOA accounts were riddled with irregularities. Money collected in fees had been diverted into personal accounts belonging to Linda and her vice president. We were talking tens of thousands of dollars. With everything I had, I reached out to the district attorney's office. I didn't come to them as a homeowner. I came as Agent David Carter of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The moment I showed my badge, the tone in the room shifted. This wasn't a petty property dispute anymore. This was fraud. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted Linda to feel what I had felt when I watched my cabin come down. I wanted her to know she wasn't untouchable. So I let her dig her hole a little deeper. 2 days later, she came strutting back onto my property, a fresh notice in hand. She looked at the wreckage behind me and smiled like it was her trophy. "I warned you," she said coldly. "This is what happens when people think they're above the rules. Now, if you want to rebuild, you'll need to submit plans to the HOA board and pay the outstanding fees. Otherwise, you're done here." I pulled out my phone and started recording again. "Say that again, Linda, just so we're clear." She puffed up proudly, repeating every word like she was reading from a script. That's when I smiled. Because what she didn't know was that her entire world was about to collapse, just like she had done to my cabin. Linda stood there, smug and confident, thinking she had me cornered. Her words were sharp, rehearsed, like she'd given the speech to a dozen other homeowners before me. But this time was different. This time she had chosen the wrong man. I let her finish, then slowly lowered my phone. "You know, Linda," I said evenly, "you remind me of the criminals I've spent my career putting behind bars. They all had that same look in their eye, like nothing could touch them, like they'd found the perfect scam. But you know what they all had in common?" She rolled her eyes. "What? That they didn't pay their HOA fees?" I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp. "That they all got caught." Before she could fire back, I reached into my jacket and pulled out my badge. The gold and blue glinted in the sunlight, bold letters spelling out exactly who I was. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Her smirk vanished. For the first time, I saw something other than arrogance in her face. Fear. "You," she stammered. "You're FBI?" "That's right," I said. "And you just demolished federal property. That's obstruction, fraud, destruction of private property, and a laundry list of other charges. And I've got it all on video." Her clipboard wobbled in her hands. You can't be serious. This is a misunderstanding. Save it," I snapped. "I gave you every chance to stop. Instead, you doubled down. You think you're untouchable because you hide behind an HOA board and some fake bylaws. But I've been investigating you for a week. I know about the money transfers. I know about the other families you scammed. And now I've got enough evidence to make sure you never bully another homeowner again." She went pale, the kind of pale that drains every ounce of arrogance from a person. Just then, 2 black SUVs pulled up on the gravel road. The doors opened and agents stepped out, men and women in suits, badges on display. Linda spun around, her eyes darting from me to them like she was trapped in a nightmare. "This is Linda Matthews," I said to my colleagues, "president of the Lakeview HOA. She's running an extortion racket disguised as a property association. She's also responsible for the unlawful demolition of my cabin." The agents closed in. Linda dropped her clipboard, her voice breaking. "You can't do this. I'm the president of the HOA. I have rights." One of the agents stepped forward, reciting the words she had probably thought she'd never hear. "Linda Matthews, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and destruction of private property. You have the right to remain silent." Her protests faded as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Neighbors had gathered again, watching from a distance. Only this time, the whispers were different. "Wait, he's FBI? Linda's being arrested?" I knew something was off about her. For years, she had ruled over them with threats and intimidation. Now they watched her being led away like any other criminal. I let out a long breath. The part of me that had burned with rage when I saw my cabin being torn apart finally felt relief. Justice wasn't just coming, it was here. But the story didn't end with Linda in the back of a squad car. The investigation spread quickly. My team dug deeper into the HOA's records, uncovering a trail of fraudulent charges, fake fines, and siphoned funds going back nearly a decade. Other board members were implicated too. By the end of the month, half the HOA leadership had been indicted. The county declared my cabin's demolition illegal, and I was awarded full compensation, enough not only to rebuild, but to upgrade. The HOA was dissolved entirely, stripped of its authority. Homeowners who had been bullied for years were finally free. I spent the following weeks rebuilding, this time with the help of grateful neighbors. George came by almost daily, hammer in hand, and together we raised new walls, stronger than before. Families who had once been too afraid to speak up brought food, tools, and encouragement. It wasn't just my cabin being rebuilt, it was the whole community's spirit. One afternoon, as we worked on the new porch, George shook his head with a chuckle. "Never thought I'd see the day Linda got hauled off in cuffs. You really showed her." I smiled, tightening a beam. People like her count on fear. They thrive on it. But when you stand up, when you shine a light on their games, they crumble. She just didn't expect the light to come from the FBI. When the cabin was finally finished, it was better than ever. Fresh wood, a wider porch, stronger walls. And every time I sat on that porch, looking out over the calm water, I remembered the moment Linda thought she had destroyed me. She didn't realize that by tearing down my cabin, she'd built the case that would tear down her entire scheme. Neighbors would often stop by to talk, still buzzing about what had happened. Some even admitted they were thinking of leaving the lake before. Now, with the HOA gone, they finally felt like they could breathe again. And me? I finally had the retreat I dreamed of. Not just a place to escape the stress of the job, but a reminder of why I did the job in the first place. To stop people like Linda from abusing power. The truth is, the HOA thought they held all the cards. They thought they could bully, threaten, and even destroy my home without consequence. But the moment they crossed the line, they walked straight into a fight they couldn't win. Because you can tear down walls. You can smash wood and brick, but you can't tear down justice. And you can't bully an FBI agent and expect to walk away free. Linda learned that the hard way.